Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the second voter rally where myself, Ja'Kiya Price Singleton, and my colleague, Jordan Simmons, will discuss the predictions thus far for the conclusion of early voting in Nashville and our expectations on Election Day. So, before we get into the real numbers, I'd like to take the time and give a quick recap of the information we went over during the last voter rally. This slide serves as a reminder of the important information we need to remember in regards to the 2020 election. First, we have the near universal absentee ballot, which has definitely changed the game this year. With this availability, we've had a significant turnout of absentee voters, which was inherently unheard of before now. Secondly, voter registration has increased up to 450,000 voters from the 340,000 in 2016. We love having more voters in the election. Lastly, absentee ballots have begun to comprise approximately 14.6% of the total vote, which is insanely different from the usual 1.7 to 2.2% in the past. Overall, we can just say absentee ballots have completely changed the game. Last time we met, Jordan and I had two base models to present for you all. One being the lowest percentage turnout of voters based on the numbers we received in 2016, and the other being our extremely optimistic turnout percentage. In the beginning, we were expecting numbers to resemble near the 62.2% model, but as time has gone, we're nearing, if not exceeding, our pie in the sky model. Now we're looking at the lowest percentage model, which shows that for the entire early voting period, we were only expecting cumulatively 196,681 voters. Now I'll give everyone a bit of time to analyze that. So next, we're looking at a 65% model based on three specific elections. Those being the 2020 federal primaries, the 2016 federal primaries, and the 2016 federal general election. These are the type of numbers we were expecting to see in this election. Cumulatively, we have 202,372 voters. Lastly, we have the pie in the sky model with a 75% model prediction. Cumulatively, we were expecting 237,156 voters. Just as a reference of where we are now, we have 181,564 ballots casted cumulatively for early voting as of right now. With this being said, we're surely going to surpass the 62.2% model. Now the question is whether we'll hit our pie in the sky expectations. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Jordan.
Thank you for that introduction, Ja'Kiya. I'm sure some of you out there are questioning how we make our models, and so I'm going to go over that real quick with this slide. And so typically, our modeling is a three-step process. First, we select the elections that we want to pay attention to. Usually it'll be some of the more recent elections because in elections past, voting locations have not been opened up until day 5, or at least not all voting locations have been opened up until day 5, and that's just not applicable to this election. After that, we specifically pay attention to the day-to-day accumulation of ballots. We take that, find out every single day how much of the vote out of the total vote was determined on that day. And so we take that cumulative data, averaged out for the election, combine it with other elections, average that out, and we apply that to the numbers that we have for this year. Then we split that up by early vote, absentee, and election day. If we'll go into the next slide, Ja'Kiya. So what have we seen so far? Well, right now, based off previous years and based off our models, we're projecting that we have about 68% of the early and absentee vote in as we speak. We're currently about 46,000 votes ahead of our 65% model. On day 10, it was projected that we'd be at 159,000 ballots, and right now, as Ja'Kiya said, we're at about 181,000 ballots. Going off that, we're also about 22,000 votes ahead of our 75% projection model, although that is projected to round out, and we're actually going to be eclipsed by 75,000 just barely. We have seen a strong decrease in voter turnout in the past 2 days. We have indeed gone down from 19,000 votes today to 12,000, but that is not cause for alarm. I want to stop you right there. Um, Day 10 has historically been one of the lowest days for voter turnout. There could be a couple reasons given for this, but in general, it is one of the lowest days for turnout, and so we predicted this ahead of time, and we will round that out. In fact, if you will, and to combine with that, the weather this year was just horrendous. Um, if day 10 already wasn't bad enough, the weather did not help it, and so we have seen a very tiny turnout on that day. But if you'll head to the next slide, Ja'Kiya, we are indeed expecting to round this trend out. We're expecting to see a very strong increase over the next 3 days. In fact, just with the voting tomorrow, we're expecting to see a very large increase, then followed up by a slight decrease in votes, and then ended out with a very strong increase for the last day of in-person or for early voting. Let's say, and so what this will look like is about 89,000 votes overall in the next 4 days. Split up, that'll be about an average of 19,000 ballots per day. And so by the end of this, we are projected to have about 270 voters for early vote and absentee. This is going to be just below our 75% model, which is projected to be at about 271,000. And now some of you may remember in the models that Ja'Kiya showed, we were projected to have 237,000 voters for early and absentee for the 75% model, but that was based off the assumption that about 70% of the total vote was going to come in through early vote and absentee. With the universal absentee vote, those numbers are going to be skewed a little bit differently. And so Ja'Kiya and I have gone back into those numbers, and now we're looking to lean towards about 20% of the total vote coming in on election day and 80% of it coming through early vote and absentee. And so that's where that disparity comes in. If you'll head on to the next slide, Ja'Kiya. And so just like I said before, we're expecting about 20% of the total vote to come in on election day. And so what that'll look like for this year specifically is about a projection of 65,000, almost 66,000 votes. If you'll head on to the next slide, Ja'Kiya. All right, and real quick, this is just what we have so far in terms of data. This is the confirmed concrete data that we have, along with some of the calculations that we ran on it. We want to take a moment to look at that. We have a couple of noticeable departures from previous elections in our models, such as the huge increase in day 2. That's just because we had a lot of absentee ballots come in on day 1. But what we have noticed is that the fluctuation in increase or decrease of turnout between days has been greater this year. It is varied more than it has in previous years. And so that is something that we want to keep in our minds for the future, especially going forward with what increased absentee ballot voting might mean for us. If you'll head on to the next slide, Ja'Kiya. Thank you. And so this is just the last 4 days of voting that we have projected with the specific numbers. If you see that share of cumulative at the bottom, that's just the mathematical version of how we calculated it. We just looked at statistically how much of the cumulative vote we'd have left. Then we took that, split that up by what proportion of each day is that of the total cumulative, and that's why I have that percentage. That's how I calculated that number. And I should mention now that these numbers that we have given you, these predictions are specifically for in-person ballots. There are discrepancies between the absentee ballots that Davidson County is counting and what the state of Tennessee is counting. And so even for the last 2 days, we haven't had concrete absentee ballot numbers that we can go off of. And so we cannot make predictions for the future. They would just be too wildly inaccurate. So again, this is just based off in-person ballots. And if you'll head on to the next slide. We would like to thank you all for coming out. I'm sure it wasn't easy to take this time out of your week, but we do very much appreciate it. It's going towards a good cause. And if you have any questions, shoot them towards us, towards Lisa or Elena, and we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you all.